Once upon a time, there was a girl. And she could see dimensions. When she looked off in the distance, and if she squinted her eyes just right, she could see what was not there. And I could read them. I could talk about dimensions not yet. I can see time itself. I see the dimensions all stacked upon each other, like a thing and inside a thing and inside of a thing. And I can see us walking on the dimension as if we're nomads. So that now is the current dimension we are in. Past is the one just past, and future is the one to be. And we are just walking the roads of dimensions through space. And it all started with the one. I can see time. Time is a story. Time is just a story. That's all it is. And this is my story. I started to see things and do things that children should not be able to do. So they took my eye away from me. They did it through neglect. They did it through hate. They did it through violence. They did it through thieving and rape and enslavement and chains. And still, I could see dimension. But the abuse changed me. So that by the time I was 8 years old, dimension itself turned inward. And my personalities, my perspectives split. I stopped being one, and I became you. I became Joanna. I became Berrigan. And I became Kalan. And then I became imagination. But imagination was different than Joanna, Berrigan, and Kalan. I also had Angel. She was different too. And I had Jerry. Now, Jerry was easy. Jerry was just my fear system. And I noticed this voice talking to me. To thine own self be true. She said that to me over and over again. To thine own self be true. To thine own self be true. You see, she only talks in story. And that was the story she chose to give me. To thine own self be true. By the time I was 15 years old, I reached something that I call the breaking point. The breaking point is buried in anger. It is the third stage of anger. The first stage is violence. The second stage of anger is communication. And the third stage of anger is the breaking point. That's when change takes place. Now, anger is a beautiful emotion. Anger is really hurt because everybody hates anger. Some religions throw it away. Other people are afraid of it. The problem is anger isn't violence, and anger isn't aggression. Anger is just an emotion. And of all the emotions, anger is the only one that is held responsible for its actions. So a lot of people throw anger away. A lot of people suppress anger. A lot of people are terrified of anger. But magic happens in anger. Only the first 4 perspectives, only the first 4 stages of growth are violent. At stage 5 and 6, you start to communicate. At 7 and 8 and 9, you get really good at communicating. And at the 10th, 11th, and 12th, you change. I am at the 11th. We need to get angry, but we need to get smart first. We all need to get smarter first. I got angry when I was 15. I became very angry. I became so angry that I decided that I was going to get out. And I realized that the people who were abusing me were not educated, not even a little bit. And I thought, all I have to do is get smarter than them, and then I can escape them. So I did. I had 2 choices. I could study at the Library of Alexandria, because I love Greek mythology, and they had Greek mythology. Or I could study at the universities provided to us by our modern man. And I noticed something. Modern man was cutting all of the artwork out. All of the arts, dancing, music, across all of our schools, they were throwing it out. And I went, wow, they don't think art is important. Understood. And then I looked at the Library of Alexandria. This got interesting. There were 12 courses taught at Alexandria, and more than 50% of them was art. And I went, well, that's interesting. Why does Alexandria have so much art and physics, chemistry, biology, astronomy? And I'm going, well, this doesn't make any sense. Why would people who value hard sciences like that have more than 50% of their courses revolve around the arts? Art must be pretty damn important. And then I went, modern man schooling or Alexandria? I'm going to go with Alexandria because they turned out teachers like Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, Plutarch, and Christ. Meanwhile, modern man is destroying the ozone. So I decided to go with Alexandria. I started studying in 1995, and I studied all of the courses that they provided in the precise order in which they gave them. Now, this is really interesting because another thing that modern man does is it takes English, writing, reading, arithmetic, history, and it lays it out like this, and we have to study a little bit of it each and every day. They don't know anything about the assembly line or the human brain. That's not how we learn. And the Library of Alexandria figured this out. So they had a different type of learning. Instead of doing 12 subjects every single day in order, they only taught one subject, music. And then they taught story. And then they taught. And then they taught. And they just keep stacking them until you reach algebra. Because by the time you get to algebra and geometry, you will have studied all of these topics. So on the University of Alexandria, it states, let no man who has not studied geometry enter these walls, which meant you were required to have this massively well-rounded education base before you even were allowed entry. And that was the school's only requirement. I mean, their only requirement. It was free to attend. You just needed to be a well-rounded student. I had studied art, piano, music, dance, all of their requirements. So that by the time I started studying philosophy, I noticed something different. In addition to that, I studied psychology, and then I studied physics. It wasn't quite coming together at that time. Then I studied geometry. When I studied geometry, I literally felt my brain change. It literally changed. And I could suddenly see perspective. And then I did it again. And I did it again. The 12 stages of growth, turns out, are not growths, they're perspectives. Turns out perspectives are dimensions. Now, mind you, at this time, I already had multiple personality disorder. I was already 3 different people, and my dimensions had already been turned inward into my own mind. By the time I was 20 years old, I came up with something called the Rorschach print perspective, and I was able to literally reverse Stockholm syndrome instantly with a single argument. The argument was what I call the Rorschach print perspective, and it works like this. I see everybody in this world standing on a pillar, their own identity on top of that pillar, and they're all looking at the single one reality in the middle of the room. But somebody has put filters in front of our eyes. So all that we see is only what other people perceive, what other people want us to perceive. And it's filtering us, so we can't see the reality. But what if we could pick up each perspective that's been filtered invasively into us and throw it away? And the next, what if I can see around it? Then I will be able to see the truth. I ask then, what is truth? All of the filters and expectations we've been told that we have to have, what are they keeping from us? That's what I wanted to know. What are they keeping from us? I studied history. I studied sociology. I saw things people don't see. I noticed something really suspicious about the Council of Nicaea. Christ, Socrates. I saw way too much unusual stuff happening in the history books. And I continued to study perspective, thinking that I was just trying to get smarter than the people who abused me. In 2015, I went into my own therapy, realizing I was in some serious need of my own therapy, and it was horribly inadequate. The stuff they were telling me was literally racism, prejudice, hopelessness, the very thing in psychology I had learned from philosophy and from Alexandria that you are supposed to be valuing at a time that you're healing, and they want me to throw it away. There was a lot of little things like that that I picked up on. And I asked again, what were they keeping from us? So I broke away from therapy. I continued going, I checked in, and very soon I was teaching my therapist. I would go home, I would do the research, I would stack and build Triadic Healing, I would go into the next session, and I would teach my therapist. When I was done, she said, you crammed 20 years of psychology, 20 years of therapy into 5. And I said, that's right. Triadic Healing. I did not know what was going on with me, and something was up. I knew I had to integrate. I was able to use triadic healing, and it literally reversed all of my mental illnesses. I had one left, integration. And there was that day when I said to them, I don't need you anymore. I remember that day. It was April of 2023. And from that point on, from April to October 16, 2023, I had thrown away you. But the lesson learned is that we must all it's I and you. From the time I was 8 years old to the time I was 42 years old, I lived without an I. From the time April 2023 to the 16th of October, I lived without a you. You want to know the difference between my infancy and 8 years old? I lived with both, I and you. I never, ever lived like everybody else. Never. I lived in fantasy and imagination, and I loved it so much I decided to stay. I never left. I could see things. I knew what it felt like. For 8 years of my life, I lived free with just I and you. And I remember what it felt like living with I. Most of us have forgotten I before we are 2 years old. Most of us never even learn I. Most of us don't ever even learn it. You have no idea what it feels like. I couldn't understand why no one could figure this out. I was 8 years old before I lost my I. But you never even got yours. So you don't know what it feels like. So I have to teach you what it feels like to be an I. I often say that I was so determined to become integrated that it never occurred to me that I was more than just this dimension. That's what we are. We are dimensions. We are molecules. We are three. After I integrated, I had to understand. I wanted to know what I had created. I wanted the logical layout of everything. So I spent the next several years doing nothing but researching, documenting, and logically proving my theories. My documentation started in 2015 and goes to this moment. And it will continue to go on because this is a journal after all, and My God, do I love podcasting. So I record all of my journey. I am removing the unknown from your future. That is my gift to you. I am giving you knowledge. That way, you don't have to fear the unknown. Because I don't have a problem going first. Because I see adventure. And I will map the way for you. I did say it all this time. I'm reaching for the stars, and I'm taking you with me. But how do I do it? And I said, I don't have any marketing. Neither did Rome. So not only am I gonna take those bastards down, I am going to take them down with their own game, and I'm going to use their game to boost my own business. Fuck you, Rome. Check mate. My name is Anna Imagination. I have many names, 12 to be exact. Queen of the Darkness. That's when I was in the third perspective. Queen of the Darkness. I am an oral historian. I am goddess of manifestation. I also like Queen Anna. That one I really love. I'm a mermaid. I was 2 years old when I thought of that one. I am a mermaid. Yep, that was 2-year-old me going, I'm a mermaid. She didn't give me a name when I was a mermaid, just I'm a mermaid, because I was 2. My education did not stop. I recorded everything. And then the visions they went too fast for me. I couldn't keep up. I couldn't type so fast. And I thought, you know what will work? Podcasting. I will webcam this shit. And I was terrified because every time I put myself on camera, I was beaten for it. I was called arrogant and conceited. I was called so many names. I had a big one. I had the biggest one. And they did not like that theirs wasn't as big as mine. So I reached the 6th perspective. May. Of 2022. That is the night that imagination came out. If that's the 6th perspective, then we have the numbers wrong. Which means that this is the 10th. Which means this is only the 10th perspective. Interesting. Well, we'll find out, won't we? Imagination. Something happened that night. It was May of 2022. My partner was acting different too. He comes to me as an imp, quite often. And he said some things to me that he had said in previous dimensions. Verbatim. And the words he said and his actions and his everything jogged memories in me. And I knew him because I had seen him. That was the start of the darkest times that we were together. It's when I could see all of the perspectives and he couldn't even feel the energy. So I resisted my growth for as long as I could. And I felt the communication slipping away further and further. No one could understand me. I couldn't articulate what I was experiencing. And it was the seventh perspective. When I finally crossed over, I couldn't even begin to explain what I was seeing. It was astounding. I could not even begin to wrap my tongue around it. I lived for almost 3 or 4 weeks silent. I could see the network, all of it. I could see all of it. I could see the energy pool wrapped around the earth, and I could see every person hooked up to it, walking on top of it. I could see that there would be perspective, but I couldn't see it just yet. And then it was May of this year, or maybe it was June, and I was helping my son move, and I shifted again. And instantly I could see all the people with all the perspectives. Instantly I could see how there's 12 different numbers. 12 of 12 of 12 of 12, and that is our age. Our age is our numbers. There is no such thing as age. We are these 12 digits to tell us exactly which dimension we are located in of infinity. It's our coordinates on when we are born. I have 5. We have 5. We have 3. I am 11. I thought there were only 3 numbers, and there's not. It goes on. There's 12 numbers. And the numbers, the perspectives are dimensions. But I wouldn't figure this out at 8th. Now at 8th, I discovered communication. And suddenly I was, and I watched my YouTube videos go 1.5 hours to make 1 point, 20 minutes to make 5 points. And I went, wow. My videos are now down where between a couple minutes, 2 minutes. When I just go on, I say what I need and I get off. 8th perspective does that. You learn to communicate. And that was when I had the biggest epiphany of all. I went, talking is supposed to be like us walking. We are supposed to talk as well as we walk. But we don't. We are so stunted in our communication that we refer to professional speakers as professional speakers. Imagine having a professional walker, somebody who just walks around society with their professional legs. They get on stage and they walk and they strut. These are the legs, people. These are legs. Look at me. I'm walking here. That's exactly what it's equivalent to. That is how bad our speech is. We are supposed to be speaking, all of us, this fluently by the time we are 8 years old, but we're not. And I went, why not? Because somebody told children that they should be seen and not heard. And I went, who would tell them that? Why would you tell children to be quiet? Who could not have the children speak? So I bookmarked that question and I continued to do my research. At the 9th perspective, I learned dignity and I learned to not be so mean. And then at the 10th perspective, Maybe it was still the ninth perspective. Maybe it was still the ninth perspective. I had finally reached the last lesson to get me to the next perspective. I do believe this is the 10th perspective. I thought it was the 11th this whole time. Oh, it makes so much more sense now because of it being the changer. Oh, that makes so much more sense. I had to remove anger. My anger, the day I destroyed my anger, that's when I went from 9 to 10. That was the catalyst. You have to abandon anger and make change. Oh, anger does go away, but anger doesn't go away this way. It goes away this way. You have to rise above your anger, literally, to make change. Oh, isn't that gorgeous how they put that in our system? Rise above the anger. Oh, we're thinking linear. It's not linear. It's this way, guys. That is so clever. That is really clever. I don't feel anger anymore. I feel curiosity, problem solving, and I want to be like, quick, how do we do this? Because this is going to be so much fun. And then I could see the beginning, the end, time. I can see time. And it's just dimensions. Now, past and future. It's extraordinary. In fact, this I love. When you have PTSD, what you are really doing is living between two perspectives. You are literally split perspective in that moment, split dimension, because your brain, this is why, because what we imagine becomes a dimension. So your brain literally splits dimension, and suddenly you are in the past, reliving the trauma while you are in the now. So you're experiencing a split dimension when you have a PTSD episode. Flip side of that, let's say you're having a panic attack. Let's say you are in a position where you are afraid of an impending failure or something impending happening. So you think and focus on fear. Fear is living in the future. So it's fear over here. Here you are. They're both ends of the fear. This is a different kind of fear. This is past fear. This is future fear. And whenever you are afraid, it takes you out of the now, which is why you are vibrating at a lower frequency. It's because your frequencies are split between two dimensions. That's why. So I started to think shit like that up a long time ago. And I thought everyone else was stupid because I was stupid. I was told. And when I started to think this shit up, I tried to find people, and it was really hard to make friends. It was really hard to be understood. So I suppressed all of it. I suppressed the biggest part of I, my imagination. I managed to suppress my imagination from 2015 to about a month ago. And that's when I realized what imagination really was. Imagination is literally the ability to create dimensions. It's extraordinary. And I spun and I wove my story, and I spun and I wove all of my work, and I recorded and I documented it all, and I put it all over the internet because I have to organize, because that's something I like to do. So that by the time I got to the 11th, well, I guess the 10th perspective, I was able to compose again. So I wrote a song. I'm lonely, I'm lost, I'm cold and I'm broken. We've been silent for too long. We all have forgotten who we used to be, who we are. We are all laughing Inside we are crying. We are all laughing. Inside we are dying. These aren't just words. This is not a song. It's a message I've been trying to give to you. We're lonely, we're lost, we're cold and we're broken. We've been silent for too long. We all have forgotten who we used to be, who we are. Once upon a time, there was a goddess named One, and she was the goddess of story. This goddess was 5. And the first few years, she played with her imagination and she played with her stories. And she made up dolls and she played with her dolls. But 1 is the loneliest number. So she did what all 5-year-olds do. You wish your toys to come alive. And we did. Every molecule of this goddess gained free will. I can't go on here. Not yet, not right now. My subconscious mind is telling me, stop here, and I'm going, okay. The next part is a positive affirmation that I have. You have yourself. You have your dreams. You have love. You are safe. You are confident. You know who you are. You are your own authority. You self-govern. I am going to be giving those to a friend of mine who is a neuroscientist, and he is making a triliminal, which is basically subliminal messaging that goes inside of the brain to correct and undo all of the toxic programming that's been put inside of your brain. Only mine is going to be strategically done to heal you, to help you understand, and to help you remember who you are. That way you can become one again. When you do this, it is not possible to have a mental illness. It is not possible to be accepted, subjected by the majority of abuse. You would literally become abuse-proof. You cannot be a victim. You won't let you. You will never let it happen again. That needs to go in the subliminal messaging. So, when my work was complete and I realized what I was in everything that I have, my biggest question is the same one that Christ had. How do you give this information to the people? Alexandria hoarded it, and that's the problem. That is the big problem. Why did they hoard it? Well, I will tell you why they hoarded it, because if this information gets into the wrong hands, people who want to control an entire society can pretty much take whatever story they want, embed it, and then release it, and just watch story tell itself. This is called and invasive dimension. That's what happens when you try and change a story instead of letting it flow freely. I went back to the Council of Nicaea. It was easy because I can see dimension now, and I was able to go, oh, that's what they did. And a lot of things suddenly cleared up, made perfect sense. You see, they burned Alexandria at the same time that the Council of Nicaea was piecing together Christianity. And I couldn't figure out why. Why would they do that? Because if anyone figured out what dimension thinking is, then you could escape the matrix. But you have to make sure that your subliminal messaging is unknown, because once you know it, then you can't manipulate someone. Once you know it, you can't manipulate someone. I am embedding these subliminal messages inside of my own program. And I'm going to tell you each and every message going into it. Happily. I'm going to make this process as transparent as I can to show you. Believe me, this is all for you. That is my gift. Because it's really important that we learn about gifting again. It became a personal vendetta, me versus Rome, because, well, 99% of the shit that happened to me was because of Rome's subliminal message. So, I realized that the reason why Alexandria taught in the order in which they taught was because every style of learning was matched up to the child's age. Now, I know what's going on in the brain when the child is around 7 to 8 years old. The communication centers are ignited from the time the child is infant up to 8 years old. It is at 8 years old that we finally learn how to speak properly. But we had our language stunted at age 2. So the majority of the language you hear now is about 2 to 4 years old languages for somebody who raises properly with these perspectives, which means I am talking equivalent to an 11-year-old. We are supposed to be much smarter than we are right now. This never should have happened to us. The only reason why it did was because this dimensional thinking leaked and it got its hands back to Rome, which decided to embed this into the Council of Nicaea. So I'm going to fix it. Now, that was my question. How do I help people? How do I turn this into a product? How do I walk up to people on the street and say, you won't believe what I've got for you? Oh, that's so, you can feel it, right? It's because it's lying, it's manipulative. That's something else I studied. The psychology of business, the psychology of money, the psychology of, I went through it. That's when I discovered the giving transaction. That's when I discovered forward giving. People call it forgiving for short. So when I broke all of that down, I was still on this perplexed, what do I do? Well, I'm supposed to tell my story. That's what I'm doing, because that is all we do. Because if I were a goddess, that's exactly what I would do. I would make this whole thing about story. And the best thing about story is the telling of said story. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Definitely. The telling of said story. That's my part. And when you look at the actual itinerary of Alexandria, you'll notice that it's all theater based in the first 5 years, which tells me that teachers were actors. So I don't know about you, but my teachers did very little acting for me. So I feel cheated on that. Which means if there are going to be 12 lessons, and there are, because there are 12 ethics that need to be learned, I was going to write out this whole classroom, but I don't think I have to. I believe with the right subliminal messaging, the whole triadic healing, the ethics will literally be embedded right into our heads and boom, 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 just like it was with me. It'll be fine. It'll be the first 6 ethics only. Violence stops at stage 5. There's no more violence after stage 5. There's some manipulation that goes on. That ends at stage 6. It's stage 6 when violence is completely violence, malicious intent. Doesn't exist after stage 6. So yeah, I'm really excited to get us here, you know? Okay. So in the first one, I have a song. I sing you part of the song. And then it goes into story. And then it goes into the positive affirmations. Do we want finger painting next? Or do we want paintballs? We have to play. Oh, poor us. We have to play to heal. Yeah, that's right. Play to heal. That is what I do. You have to play to heal. Oh, yeah. So I have a playground in my authenticity city. That is where I play to heal. And that's where I invite others to play to heal. And it's all based off of this theory. The problem is the education part is really, it's all got to be fun. It's got to be fun. It's like a theme park for healing. I could totally go somewhere with that. Yeah, a theme park based on healing. Oh, yes. But it's a mindset. And it's a social experiment. And it's authenticity city. I'm looking for my people. Are you my people? If you think you are my people, if any of this resonated with you, click on the link below, go to my cities directory and browse. If it feels right, if it feels good, and if it gives you joy, you are my people. Thank you so much. And may the kindest of words always find you.